The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the secrets of the night. The leaves rustled, creating a symphony of nature that seemed to echo the whispers of ghosts and spirits. A chill settled over the small town of Racine, Wisconsin, as if the very air was holding its breath in anticipation of the night's events. The streets were adorned with festive decorations, each house trying to outdo the other with their spooky displays. It was Halloween night, 1982. The town had a nostalgic charm, with its vintage decorations and the sense of community that brought everyone together for this annual celebration. The air was crisp, filled with the sweet scent of decaying leaves and the promise of mischief. The fallen leaves crunched underfoot, adding to the sensory experience of the night. Jack-o'-lanterns illuminated from within cast eerie glows on front porches. Their carved faces, some smiling, some menacing, seemed to come alive in the flickering candlelight. Children disguised as goblins and ghouls darted from house to house, their laughter echoing in the twilight. The excitement was palpable, as each child hoped for the best treats and the spookiest scares. But on this Halloween, a silence would fall, a silence heavy with dread. The usual sounds of joy and celebration would be replaced by an eerie stillness that would send shivers down the spine of anyone who noticed. The Fronczak family, like their neighbors, embraced the spirit of the holiday. They had spent weeks preparing, decorating their home with cobwebs, skeletons, and other spooky adornments. Their little boy, Paul Joseph Fronczak, was particularly excited. Dressed in an adorable pumpkin costume, he was the center of attention, bringing smiles to everyone who saw him. At just 11 months old, he was experiencing his first Halloween, his bright eyes wide with wonder at the costumed figures that surrounded him. The lights, the sounds, the colors, it was all a magical experience for the young child. Little did they know, this night of innocent celebration would become a night etched in their memories, forever marked by a parent's worst nightmare. As the evening progressed, the festive atmosphere would take a dark turn, leaving the Fronczak family and the entire community in a state of shock and sorrow. The joyous laughter of children would be replaced by the concerned murmurs of neighbors, and the flashing lights of police cars would cast an ominous glow on the once cheerful decorations. The Fronczak family, who had been so full of joy just hours before, would find themselves plunged into a nightmare they could never have imagined. As the realization of what had happened set in, the community rallied together, searching every corner, every shadow, hoping against hope that Paul Joseph would be found safe and sound. The sense of unity that had brought them together for a night of fun now bound them in a collective effort to find the missing child. News of the disappearance spread quickly, with reporters descending on the small town, turning it into a media circus. Headlines screamed the tragic news, and the story of Paul Joseph Fronczak's disappearance became a national sensation. The Fronczak family, devastated and heartbroken, clung to each other for support. Their once happy home was now filled with an unbearable silence, broken only by the occasional sobs and the comforting words of friends and neighbors who tried to offer solace in the face of unimaginable grief. In the days that followed, the community held candlelight vigils, praying for the safe return of the child. The flickering flames of the candles mirrored the hope that still burned in their hearts, even as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. The Fronczak home, once filled with laughter and joy, now stood as a silent testament to their loss. Paul's crib remained empty, his toys untouched, and the family photo on the mantel was a constant reminder of the missing piece of their hearts. As the seasons changed and the Halloween decorations were taken down, the sense of lingering sadness remained. The town of Racine, Wisconsin, would never be the same, forever haunted by the memory of that fateful Halloween night. In the years that followed, Halloween would come again, and children would once more trick-or-treat in their costumes. But the sense of carefree joy was tinged with caution, a reminder of the fragility of innocence and the shadows that can lurk even on the brightest of nights. A memorial for Paul Joseph Fronczak stood as a poignant reminder of the night that changed everything. Flowers, toys, and notes left by those who remembered him served as a testament to the impact of his short life and the hope that one day, answers would be found. The Fronczak family, older now, still held on to hope. They looked at old photographs, remembering the joy Paul had brought into their lives, and clung to the belief that one day they would find closure, and perhaps even a miracle. The town of Racine, forever changed by the events of that Halloween night, remained united. The community's strength and resilience were a testament to the enduring human spirit, even in the face of the darkest of times. And so the wind continued to whisper through the trees, carrying with it the stories of the past and the hopes for the future. The leaves rustled, a gentle reminder of the passage of time and the enduring power of memory. In memory of Paul Joseph Fronczak and all missing children, may we never forget their stories and continue to hold on to hope.
I dressed Paul in a cozy, hand-knitted spider costume. The costume was a labor of love, each stitch carefully crafted to ensure he was both warm and adorable. The little spider legs dangled playfully, and the big, googly eyes on the hood gave him an endearing, almost comical look. He was a picture of Halloween charm, his chubby cheeks rosy with excitement. His smile was infectious, lighting up the room and drawing everyone's attention. It was his first Halloween, and I wanted it to be special, a memory we could cherish forever. We attended a party at the local bowling alley, the sounds of laughter and bowling pins crashing a comforting backdrop to the evening. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the joy and excitement of children and adults alike, all dressed in their creative costumes. Paul, nestled securely in his stroller, was the center of attention, his infectious giggles warming the hearts of those around him. People would stop by to admire his costume, their faces lighting up with smiles as they interacted with him. He was a little star, basking in the affection and attention. As the evening wore on, I decided to head home. The party was winding down, and the once lively bowling alley was starting to quiet. People were beginning to leave, their laughter and conversations fading into the night. It was getting late, and Paul, weary from the day's festivities, was starting to doze. His little head bobbed gently with the motion of the stroller, his eyes fluttering closed as he succumbed to sleep. The day had been long and filled with excitement, and now it was time for rest. I bundled him up in his stroller and stepped out into the cool night air. The crisp breeze was refreshing, a stark contrast to the warm, bustling atmosphere of the party. The streets were quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. The walk home was short, just a few blocks, and I relished the quiet moments with my son. The neighborhood was peaceful, the houses dark and still, as if the world was holding its breath. It was a perfect end to a perfect evening, or so I thought. I had no idea that these ordinary minutes were about to transform into an extraordinary ordeal, a descent into a terrifying unknown. As we turned the corner onto our street, the atmosphere shifted. The once familiar path seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows dancing ominously under the streetlights. A sense of unease crept over me, and I quickened my pace, eager to reach the safety of our home. Every sound seemed amplified, the rustling leaves now a menacing whisper, the distant hum of traffic a foreboding growl. I glanced around nervously, my heart pounding in my chest. The stroller felt heavier, the wheels dragging as if resisting our progress. I clutched the handle tighter, my knuckles white with tension. Finally, our house came into view, a beacon of light in the darkness. I hurried up the path, fumbling with the keys in my haste. The door creaked open, and I pushed the stroller inside, slamming the door shut behind us. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but the unease lingered, a shadow that refused to be dispelled. I lifted Paul from the stroller, holding him close. He stirred slightly but remained asleep, his tiny body warm and comforting in my arms. I carried him upstairs, laying him gently in his crib. As I watched him sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the night had left an indelible mark on our lives. I stood by the window, looking out at the dark street. The shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and I shivered despite the warmth of the room. What had happened out there? Was it just my imagination, or had we truly encountered something beyond the ordinary? Only time would tell, but for now I was grateful to be home, safe with my son. I turned off the light and climbed into bed, the events of the night replaying in my mind. Sleep came slowly, but eventually I drifted off, holding on to the hope that tomorrow would bring clarity and peace. The boy in the spider costume had experienced his first Halloween, and it was a night neither of us would ever forget. I placed Paul in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm of sleep. Exhausted from the day's events, I lay down on my own bed, drifting off with the comforting sounds of my son's soft breaths. But my slumber was short-lived. A piercing cry, sharp and urgent, jolted me awake. I rushed to Paul's room, my heart pounding in my chest. The crib was empty. Panic seized me. I searched frantically, my mind refusing to accept the impossible. Paul was gone, vanished. I raced next door, banging on my neighbor's door, my voice hoarse with terror. The police were called, sirens soon shattering the stillness of the night. The search for Paul Joseph Fronczak had begun, a desperate race against time that would consume the small town and capture the attention of a nation.
Section 4. Dead Ends and Whispers. The police descended upon the Fronczak home, their faces grim, their movements urgent. Every inch of the house was searched, every neighbor questioned. Search parties fanned out across the town, combing through parks, alleys, and backyards. But Paul was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and the initial hope that he would be found safe and sound began to dwindle. Theories swirled through the community like fallen leaves in the wind. Had someone snatched Paul from his crib? Was it a random act of a stranger? Or did someone close to the family harbor a dark secret? The lack of evidence only fueled the speculation. The mystery of Paul's disappearance deepened, leaving a community in shock and a family shattered. Section 5. Shadows of Doubt. As weeks turned into months, the investigation into Paul's disappearance hit a wall. Every lead ran cold, and the once bustling police station, filled with the hope of finding the missing child, began to quiet down. The officers, who had initially been so determined, now found themselves at a loss. The case files grew thicker, but the clues remained elusive. Every witness interview yielded no new information. The neighbors, who had been so eager to help, now seemed to have nothing more to offer. The detectives, who had once been so confident, now found themselves questioning every decision they had made. The frustration was palpable, and the sense of defeat began to set in. The police, frustrated and heartbroken for the Fronczak family, were forced to scale back their efforts. The resources that had been poured into the search were slowly being redirected to other cases. The officers, who had grown close to the family, felt a deep sense of sorrow. They had promised to bring Paul home, but now that promise seemed impossible to keep. The case, though never closed, grew cold. The bulletin board, once filled with fresh leads and new information, now stood as a grim reminder of their failure. The missing person posters, once vibrant and hopeful, now seemed to mock their efforts. The hope that had once driven them was now replaced with a heavy sense of despair. The once bright hope of finding Paul alive and well began to flicker and fade. The community, which had once rallied together, now found itself divided. The whispers of doubt and suspicion began to grow louder, and the sense of unity that had once been so strong began to crumble. Whispers began to circulate, replacing the initial shock and sympathy. Doubts were cast, fingers pointed. The neighbors, who had once been so supportive, now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. The sense of trust that had once been so strong was now replaced with a sense of fear and suspicion. Some speculated that Dora, driven to desperation by an unknown motive, had harmed her own child. The rumors spread like wildfire, and the once supportive community now found itself divided. The accusations, though unfounded, began to take their toll on Dora. The weight of the suspicion was almost too much to bear. Others clung to the belief that Paul was alive, stolen away by human traffickers or perhaps raised by another family, unaware of his true identity. The hope that Paul was out there somewhere living a different life was the only thing that kept some people going. The idea that he might one day be found and reunited with his family was a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark time. The lack of answers only fueled the speculation, casting a long, dark shadow over the Fronczak family and the community that mourned with them. The unanswered questions, the unfulfilled promises, and the unrelenting doubt all combined to create an atmosphere of despair. The community, once so full of hope and determination, now found itself lost in the shadows of doubt. The Fronczak family, though never giving up hope, found themselves struggling to hold on to the belief that Paul would one day come home. The shadows of doubt loomed large, and the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever.